The crash landing. On a distant planet, a young alien girl named Lyra raced against time. Her homeworld, Zoreth, was in danger. The dark forces of the Tyrannian Empire were on her tail, hunting her for the secret she carried, a powerful artifact that could save her people. Lyra had always been brave, but today was different. Fear pulsed through her as she piloted her small ship through the swirling clouds of a foreign atmosphere. Suddenly, alarms blared inside the cockpit. The controls flashed red as the ship shook violently. Lyra's heart raced. "No, no, no," she cried, gripping the controls tightly. The ship had taken a hit from enemy fire. She could see the surface of a blue planet below, but she couldn't steer her ship. The only option left was to crash land. "Brace yourself, Lyra," she told herself, swallowing hard as she prepared for impact. The ship plummeted toward the ground, the trees of the alien planet growing larger in her view. With a loud crash, the vessel slammed into the thick forest, sending branches and debris flying in all directions. The world around her spun, and then everything went dark. When Lyra opened her eyes, she found herself surrounded by smoke and the smell of burning metal. Her head throbbed painfully. Panic surged through her as she realized she was alone. She looked around the wreckage of her ship, now twisted and mangled. With trembling hands, she tried to open the hatch, but it was stuck. Her heart raced as she pushed harder, finally forcing it open and crawling out into the light. Outside, the sun shone brightly, casting an unusual glow over the lush green landscape. Lyra took a deep breath, relieved to be out, but her relief quickly faded as she scanned her surroundings. She was in a strange place, and danger still lurked nearby. Lyra's keen ears caught distant sounds. Vehicles, voices, they were coming closer. She needed to hide. Summoning her strength, Lyra stumbled into the trees, trying to blend in with the thick foliage. She could hear the voices getting louder, and soon she spotted a group of humans approaching. They wore strange clothes and seemed curious about the wreckage. Lyra held her breath, hoping they wouldn't see her. Among them was a young man named Jake. He had a friendly face, with tousled brown hair and bright green eyes that sparkled with curiosity. Jake had grown up in a small town on Earth, where adventures were few and far between. He was always looking for something exciting to happen, but he never imagined he would find it this way. "Look over there," Jake exclaimed, pointing toward the wreckage. "What do you think it is?" His friends shrugged, equally intrigued. They approached cautiously, the sounds of their footsteps crunching through the leaves. As they drew near, Lyra's heart raced. She could feel their presence like a storm, and her instincts screamed for her to run. But where could she go? She was trapped. Jake peered closer at the ship. "This is amazing. I've never seen anything like it." He stepped closer to the wreckage, completely unaware of the alien girl hiding just beyond his sight. Lyra watched him, fascinated by the human's awe. He seemed harmless, but she knew better than to trust anyone. She had seen how humans could be, kind one moment and cruel the next. Yet, something about Jake felt different. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the forest, breaking the moment. It was the sound of engines, heavy, menacing engines. Lyra's heart sank. The Tyrannian Empire had found her. They were here to finish what they had started. "Everyone, we need to get out of here," Jake shouted, panic in his voice as he turned to his friends. They could hear the distant roar of the enemy ships approaching. Jake looked around, his instincts kicking in. "Let's go. We have to warn the town." Lyra's mind raced. She had to act fast. With her heart pounding, she made a split-second decision. She couldn't let them see her, but she also couldn't leave them to face the danger alone. If they were caught by the Tyrannians, they would be in grave danger just like her. With courage swelling inside her, Lyra stepped out from her hiding spot, revealing herself to Jake and his friends. Their eyes widened in shock as they took in her unusual appearance. Her skin shimmered in various shades of blue, and her long flowing hair seemed to glisten like the stars. "Please," Lyra said, her voice trembling but firm. "You have to help me." Jake and his friends stood frozen, caught between fear and curiosity. Lyra could see the questions in their eyes, but she didn't have time to explain. The enemy was coming, and they needed to move. "Quickly. They will come for me," Lyra urged, glancing back toward the sky. The sound of engines grew louder, and she could see the dark shapes of enemy ships cutting through the clouds. Jake snapped out of his shock. "We can't leave you here," he said, stepping forward. "Follow us. We'll get you to safety." Lyra felt a mix of gratitude and fear as she nodded. Together, they began to run deeper into the forest, the sound of their hearts racing in unison. In that moment, an unlikely alliance was born, setting the stage for an extraordinary journey ahead, one that would change their lives forever. The fateful encounter. Lyra sprinted through the dense forest, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. She could hear the heavy thrum of the enemy ships overhead, their engines echoing ominously through the trees. The humans ran beside her, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. She didn't know if they fully understood the danger they were in, but she appreciated their bravery. "Where are we going?" Jake shouted, glancing back at her. His green eyes were wide, filled with concern. "Just keep running," Lyra replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She needed to find a safe place to hide, somewhere the Tyrannians wouldn't think to look. They dashed through the forest, dodging branches and leaping over roots. Lyra felt a strange sense of connection with Jake as they ran. He was just a human, but he was willing to risk his safety for her. As they pushed forward, she could see that his friends were also determined to protect her. Finally, they reached a clearing where the trees thinned out. Lyra spotted a large old shed in the distance. "There, we can hide in there," she pointed, relief flooding her. Jake nodded, and they all sprinted toward the shed, reaching it just as the sound of engines grew louder. They ducked inside, and Lyra quickly closed the door behind them, holding her breath. The shed was dark, filled with old tools and dusty equipment, but it offered them a moment of safety. As they stood in silence, Lyra could hear the heavy footsteps of the Tyrannian soldiers outside. They were searching for her, and she needed to act fast. Jake turned to her, his expression filled with concern. "What are they?" he asked, glancing at his friends. "What do they want with you?" "They are from the Tyrannian Empire," Lyra explained, her voice trembling slightly. "They want to capture me because I possess a powerful artifact from my home world. It can control energy, and in the wrong hands, it can cause destruction." "Why do you have it?" one of Jake's friends, a girl named Mia, asked. She had curly brown hair and a look of determination on her face. "I was entrusted with it to protect my people," Lyra replied. "But now they are after me. I can't let them take it." As she spoke, Jake looked around the shed, trying to formulate a plan. "What do we do now?" he asked. "They could find us any minute." Lyra took a deep breath, calming her racing heart. "We need to be quiet and wait for the right moment. If they come in here, we can fight back. I can use my powers to defend us." Jake frowned, confusion furrowing his brow. "Your powers?" "Yes," Lyra said, her voice firm. "I can manipulate energy, but I can't do it alone. I need your help too. If we work together, we can stop them." Suddenly, the door rattled. Lyra's heart dropped as she heard a rough voice outside. "Search the shed. She has to be in there." Jake's friends looked terrified, their eyes wide with fear. Lyra felt panic rising in her chest, but she pushed it down. She had to be brave, for them and for herself. "Get ready," Lyra whispered, her heart racing. "When I say go, we'll burst out and fight. Remember, trust me." Jake nodded, determination flickering in his eyes. "We can do this." The door creaked open, and a tall, armored figure stepped inside. The Tyrannian soldier was imposing, with dark scales covering his skin and glowing red eyes. He scanned the shed, searching for any sign of Lyra. "Now," Lyra shouted, leaping forward with energy crackling around her hands. Jake and his friends rushed up beside her, ready to fight. The soldier hesitated for a moment, surprised by their sudden movement. But Lyra was faster. She raised her hands, and a burst of energy shot from her palms, striking the soldier square in the chest. He staggered backward, caught off guard. Jake didn't hesitate. He grabbed an old metal pipe from the ground and swung it at the soldier, hitting him hard. Mia and the others joined in, using whatever they could find as weapons. Lyra felt a surge of power as they fought together. She focused her energy, creating a shield around them to protect against incoming fire. The soldier regained his footing and fired back, but Lyra's shield absorbed the blast, sending sparks flying in all directions. "Keep fighting," she urged, adrenaline pumping through her veins. They were working as a team now, fighting for their lives against an enemy that was far more powerful. The battle raged on, but Lyra could feel their connection growing stronger with every move. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with. Finally, with one last burst of energy, Lyra knocked the soldier back, sending him crashing against the wall. He groaned and slumped to the ground, defeated. Breathing heavily, Lyra turned to Jake and his friends, who were equally exhausted but exhilarated. "We did it," she exclaimed, a smile spreading across her face. "We fought together." Jake looked at her, admiration shining in his eyes. "That was incredible. You really saved us." Lyra felt warmth spreading through her chest. She hadn't expected to find such courage and friendship among humans. This bond was unexpected, but it was real, and she cherished it. Just then, the sound of more approaching ships filled the air. They couldn't rest yet. The danger was still out there. "We need to move now," Lyra said, urgency in her voice. "We can't stay here. They will come looking for him." Jake nodded, determination hardening his features. "Let's find a way out of here together." As they hurried out of the shed and into the thick forest, Lyra knew this was just the beginning of their adventure. Together, they would face whatever came next, and perhaps, amidst the danger, they might discover something beautiful, a bond that could change everything. The hidden refuge. Lyra led Jake and his friends through the dense forest, their hearts pounding with adrenaline. The sound of enemy ships faded into the distance, but she knew it wasn't over. They needed to find a safe place to regroup and plan their next move. As they navigated through the thick underbrush, Lyra felt a mix of hope and fear. She had never expected to find allies among humans, but Jake and his friends had proven their bravery. "Where are we going?" Maya asked, her voice shaky but determined as she followed closely behind. "There's a cave nearby," Lyra replied, glancing back at her companions. "It's hidden from view, and I think it could be a good place to rest for a while." Jake, who was keeping pace with her, nodded. "Lead the way. We trust you." Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest at Jake's words. They had only just met, yet they were already willing to follow her into danger. She focused ahead, determined to protect them. After several minutes of running, they reached a small, rocky outcrop nestled between two towering trees. Lyra pointed to a narrow entrance hidden behind some vines. "Here it is," she exclaimed, excitement bubbling within her. They slipped into the cool darkness of the cave, the air fresh and crisp. As their eyes adjusted to the dim light, Lyra noticed the cave walls glimmering with mineral deposits, casting a soft glow around them. "This is amazing," Jake said, looking around in awe. "It's like something out of a fantasy book." "Glad you like it," Lyra replied with a smile. "It's one of my favorite places on Zorith. It always feels safe here." They settled deeper into the cave, and Lyra led them to a small clearing where they could sit and catch their breath. The adrenaline from the fight began to fade, and exhaustion set in. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, his voice softening as he looked at Lyra. "I will be," she replied, though the truth was that her energy was drained. She had used a lot of her powers to fight off the Tyrannian soldier. "But I need to rest for a moment." "Mia," noticing Lyra's fatigue, quickly offered her a bottle of water. "Here, drink this. It will help." "Thank you," Lyra said gratefully, taking a sip and feeling the cool liquid refresh her. As they sat in the cave, Jake and his friends exchanged worried glances. "What happens now?" Maya asked, breaking the silence. "What do we do about the Tyrannians?" Lyra took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts. "We need to find a way to outsmart them. They won't give up easily. But I also can't fight them alone. We need a plan." Jake nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. "What if we lure them away from you? We could create a distraction while you escape." "That could work," Lyra said, considering his idea. "But it would be risky. If they catch you." "We'll take our chances," Jake interrupted, his voice resolute. "You're more important than us. We can handle ourselves." Lyra's heart swelled at his words. "You're brave, Jake. But I don't want to put you in danger. I can't lose you all. You've already done so much for me." "We're in this together," Jake insisted, his green eyes locked on hers. "We'll find a way to help you." As Lyra looked at him, she felt an unexplainable connection growing between them. Perhaps it was the shared danger or the bravery they had shown for each other, but something deep inside her told her they were meant to face this together. "All right," Lyra finally said, determination replacing her doubt. "We'll come up with a plan. But we need to move quickly. I can sense that the Tyrannians are still searching for me." Mia stood up, her determination reignited. "What can we do to help?" "First, we need to gather information," Lyra replied. "We can use the cave's entrance as a vantage point. If we see the enemy ships, we can plan our next move based on their positions." Jake and Mia nodded in agreement, while the others began to search the cave for any useful supplies. Lyra joined them, knowing that every bit of help could be crucial. After gathering some old tools and leftover food, they huddled together, forming a circle. "Let's take shifts watching the entrance," Jake suggested. "If we spot any ships, we can warn each other." "Good idea," Lyra agreed. "I'll take the first watch." As the others settled down to rest, Lyra took her place near the entrance, peering out into the dim light of the forest. The world outside was eerily quiet, and she felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. She had to protect her new friends, but the looming threat of the Tyrannians hung over them like a dark cloud. As the minutes passed, Lyra's thoughts drifted. She couldn't help but wonder about her future and the implications of her journey. Would they really be able to defeat the Tyrannians? Could she truly trust these humans with her life? Suddenly, a faint noise broke the stillness. Lyra's heart raced as she squinted into the shadows of the trees. There in the distance, she could see the outlines of ships emerging from the clouds, their engines humming ominously. "Jake, Mia," Lyra called urgently, her voice breaking the silence. "They're coming." Within moments, Jake and Mia were at her side, eyes wide with fear. "What do we do?" Jake asked, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "Stay calm," Lyra instructed. "We need to prepare for our distraction. I can create a barrier to keep them from spotting us. But we need to be quick." As she focused her energy, Lyra felt the familiar warmth flowing through her. She raised her hands, and a shimmering barrier formed around the cave entrance, cloaking them in invisibility. "Now let's split up," Jake suggested, his determination unwavering. "We'll create noise in different areas to draw them away. Mia, you come with me. Lyra, stay here and focus on the barrier." Lyra nodded, trusting Jake's leadership. "Be careful," she urged, her heart pounding as they prepared to face the danger outside. As they slipped out into the forest, Lyra held her breath, praying they would be safe. She focused on the barrier, feeling the energy hum around them. They were fighting for more than just survival. They were fighting for each other, and she wouldn't let anything happen to them. The world outside was full of uncertainty, but one thing was clear. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. With newfound strength and determination, Lyra was ready to fight for her freedom, her friends, and the spark of hope that had ignited between them. We need to prepare a backup plan in case they can't lure the Tyranians away, Lyra said, her mind racing. If they don't return soon, we might have to make a run for it. Right. I'll gather some supplies, Daniel said, quickly moving deeper into the cave. He began rummaging through the old tools and equipment they had found earlier, looking for anything that could help them. As Lyra maintained her focus on the barrier, she couldn't help but feel a surge of admiration for the humans. They were brave and willing to fight for her, despite the danger. It was a feeling she hadn't expected but welcomed wholeheartedly. After a few tense moments, Jake and Mia returned, breathless and wide-eyed. "We did it," Jake exclaimed, his voice filled with excitement. "We created enough noise to distract them. They're heading in the opposite direction." Relief washed over Lyra, and she allowed the barrier to dissipate, letting the cool air flow back into the cave. "Great job, but we need to keep moving. They could realize their mistake at any moment." Mia nodded, glancing around the cave. "What's our next move?" Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their situation. "We need to find a way to reach the old resistance base. It's hidden deep in the mountains, and it should be a safe haven." "Sounds like a plan," Jake said, determination lighting up his green eyes. "But how do we get there without being spotted?" "We'll use the forest as cover," Lyra suggested. "I know a few paths that will keep us out of sight, but we have to move quickly and quietly." With a new sense of purpose, the group gathered their supplies. Daniel handed Lyra a small device that resembled a walkie-talkie. "This might help us stay in touch if we get separated," he said. "Thank you," Lyra said, tucking the device into her pocket. "Stay close and keep an eye on each other." As they prepared to leave the cave, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something much bigger than themselves. This was not just about her survival anymore. It was about all of them fighting against a common enemy. Stepping out of the cave, they took one last look at their temporary refuge before disappearing into the forest. The trees loomed above them, providing a sense of safety, but the distant roar of the ships reminded them of the danger that lurked nearby. As they moved cautiously through the underbrush, Lyra led the way, her senses heightened. The forest was eerily quiet, the only sound being the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. She could feel the weight of her powers thrumming within her, and she knew that she had to stay strong for her friends. After several minutes of careful navigation, they reached a clearing that overlooked a steep valley. The mountains rose majestically in the distance, their peaks shrouded in mist. "That's where we need to go," Lyra pointed toward the mountains. "But we have to cross this valley first." Jake squinted, scanning the area. "It doesn't look safe. What if the Tyranians are watching?" Lyra nodded, understanding his concern. "We'll have to use the cover of the trees to move quickly. I'll use my powers to create a diversion if necessary." Mia took a deep breath, determination etched on her face. "We can do this. Together." With their goal in sight, the group made their way toward the valley. Lyra felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. Every step was a testament to their courage, and she was grateful to have such brave companions by her side. As they approached the edge of the clearing, Lyra suddenly sensed a disturbance in the air. Her instincts kicked in, and she raised her hand, signaling for them to stop. "Wait, I think I sense something." They froze, eyes wide as they scanned their surroundings. The hairs on the back of Lyra's neck stood on end, and she concentrated, trying to decipher the energy around them. In that moment, a low rumble echoed through the trees, followed by a series of explosions in the distance. The ground shook beneath their feet, and Lyra felt a rush of fear. "They're coming," she shouted, urgency fueling her voice. "Back to the trees," Jake yelled, grabbing Maya's hand and pulling her with him. Lyra quickly followed, her heart racing as they darted back into the cover of the forest. They moved swiftly, weaving through the thick trunks and low branches. The sounds of chaos echoed behind them, the Tyranians relentlessly searching for them. As they reached a dense thicket, Lyra turned to her friends, breathless but resolute. We can't stop now. We have to keep moving. We're closer than ever to the resistance base, and we can't let them catch us. With their spirits high and determination renewed, they pushed forward, knowing that they were fighting for their lives and the future of Zoreth. Together, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, determined to protect each other at all costs. The hidden resistance base. As they continued deeper into the forest, the sounds of chaos faded, replaced by the serene whispers of nature. Lyra led the way, her senses sharp and alert. Every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs kept her on edge. She could feel the tension among her companions, but she also sensed their determination to see this through. After a while, they reached a narrow path that wound its way up a steep hill. Lyra glanced back at Jake, Mia, and Daniel, ensuring they were still with her. "We're close," she said, trying to reassure them. "The resistance base is just beyond this ridge." The path was challenging, with uneven stones and overgrown roots that threatened to trip them. Lyra moved cautiously, her heart racing at the thought of what lay ahead. They had been running for what felt like hours, but they couldn't afford to slow down now. As they climbed, the forest grew quieter, the only sounds coming from their heavy breathing and the occasional bird song. Just as they reached the top of the ridge, Lyra paused to catch her breath and take in the view. Below them lay a hidden valley, lush and vibrant, with a few structures scattered throughout. "There it is," she breathed, pointing toward a cluster of buildings partially camouflaged by the trees. "That's the base." Jake squinted, examining the scene. "It looks deserted," he said. "Are you sure this is the right place?" Lyra nodded. This is where the resistance gathered to plan their missions against the Tyranians. They could still be here, or they might have left to find safety elsewhere. Mia stepped closer, her eyes wide with curiosity. "What if we find them? Do you think they'll help us?" "They have to," Lyra replied firmly. "We're fighting the same enemy. If they're still here, we can unite our forces." With renewed hope, they carefully made their way down the ridge, ensuring they stayed hidden behind the trees. As they approached the base, Lyra's heart raced. What if it really was abandoned? What if no one was left to help them? When they reached the edge of the clearing, Lyra turned to her friends. "We should be cautious. If the Tyranians are searching for us, they could have set traps around the base." Jake nodded, gripping his makeshift weapon, a sturdy branch he had picked up earlier. "Let's move slowly and keep an eye out." They crept forward, staying low to the ground. As they entered the clearing, the buildings came into full view. Some were made of stone, others from metal scraps, all covered with moss and vines. Lyra could see faded symbols on the walls, markings of the resistance. "Look," Daniel said, pointing to a nearby structure. "That one looks more intact." Lyra agreed. "Let's check it out. It might have supplies or information." They made their way to the building, the air thick with anticipation. Inside, the light filtered through cracks in the walls, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Shelves lined the walls, filled with old equipment, maps, and faded photographs of resistance fighters. Lyra's heart sank a little. It felt like a forgotten place, a ghost of what it once was. "Doesn't look like anyone's been here in a while," Jake commented, running his fingers over the dusty surfaces. Suddenly, Mia's voice broke the silence. "What's this?" She was kneeling by a table cluttered with old communication devices. Lyra hurried over. "That might be a transmitter," she said, her excitement growing. "If it still works, we can reach out to other resistance groups." Daniel joined them, peering at the device. "Can you fix it?" Lyra examined the transmitter, her heart pounding. "I can try, but it might take time." "Time we don't have," Jake said, glancing anxiously out of the building. "We need to keep moving." "Let me at least see if I can get it to power it up," Lyra insisted. She knelt by the device and began to work, her fingers dancing over the buttons and wires. As she focused, she felt the presence of her friends nearby. their energy giving her strength. She could sense their hope, their belief in her abilities. After a few tense moments, the device hummed to life, and a green light flickered on. "I did it," Lyra exclaimed, a wave of triumph washing over her. "Now let's see if we can reach anyone." Jake watched her, admiration evident in his eyes. "That's amazing. Now, who do we contact?" "There should be a list of frequencies on the wall," Lyra replied, glancing around the room. "If any of the Resistance members are still out there, we can ask for help." "She won't escape us again," another replied. "We'll find her, and when we do, she will pay for her defiance." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. They were talking about her. She felt a wave of fear wash over her, but it was quickly replaced by anger. She had fought too hard to let them win. Through the cracks between the crates, she watched the Tyrannians as they moved closer to their hiding spot. Lyra squeezed Jake's hand, and he glanced at her, his eyes filled with determination. They wouldn't let fear control them. Just then, a loud explosion shook the ground, and dust rained down from the ceiling. The soldiers turned, startled. "What was that?" one shouted. "Commander Varick's team must be here," another soldier replied, panic creeping into his voice. "They're attacking." Lyra's heart raced at the thought of reinforcements finally arriving. "We have to help," she whispered urgently. But Jake shook his head. "We need to stay hidden for now. If we charge out there, we'll be exposed." Reluctantly, Lyra nodded, knowing they had to trust the Resistance. Outside, the chaos escalated as blaster fire lit up the darkening sky. The sounds of battle echoed through the air, punctuated by shouts and explosions. Lyra's heart swelled with hope and fear at the same time. Commander Varick's team was fighting for them. She felt a surge of adrenaline as she waited, each moment stretching into eternity. After what felt like an eternity, the sounds of battle began to die down. Lyra leaned closer to the edge of the crates, straining to hear what was happening outside. Had they won? Had they lost? Suddenly, the door to the storage room burst open, and a figure rushed in. Lyra gasped, ready to defend herself, but it was Commander Varick, his armor scuffed, but his spirit unbroken. "We need to move," he said, urgency in his voice. "The Tyrannians are regrouping, and we can't afford to stay here." Lyra wasted no time. "What about our friends? Are they safe?" "They're covering our retreat, but we must go now," he urged. "They've taken heavy losses, and we can't risk being trapped here." Without hesitation, Lyra and her friends followed Varick out of the room and back into the clearing. The chaos of battle surrounded them. Smoke billowed from the remains of the Tyrannian encampment, and bodies lay strewn across the ground, both human and Tyrannian. "Stick close," Varick shouted, leading the way through the debris. Lyra felt a mix of dread and exhilaration as they sprinted across the battlefield. She glanced back at Jake, Mia, and Daniel, their eyes filled with determination as they fought their way through the chaos. As they reached the edge of the clearing, they stumbled upon a group of Resistance fighters who had been waiting for their arrival. "We're here," Varick called out, rallying the troops. With a fierce shout, the fighters began to regroup, their morale bolstered by Varick's presence. Lyra felt a surge of hope as she realized they were not alone anymore. Together, they would stand against the Tyrannians and fight for their freedom. The battle was far from over, but they had gained a new strength, the strength of unity. As the fighters prepared to make their stand, Lyra knew that they would not be defeated. They would rise together, fueled by love, courage, and a determination to protect each other, no matter the cost. The final stand. The air was thick with tension as Lyra, Jake, Mia, Daniel, and Commander Varick stood at the edge of the clearing, staring at the Tyrannian forces regrouping in the distance. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting an orange glow over the battlefield. It felt like the calm before the storm, and Lyra could feel her heart pounding in her chest. "Now is our chance," Commander Varick said, turning to the group. "We have to hit them before they can organize. If we wait, they'll come at us with everything they have. Lyra nodded, her resolve strengthening. We can't let them take this base. We've already lost so much. Jake stepped forward, his expression fierce. We need to protect our people, Lyra, whatever it takes. All right then, Varric said, his voice steady. We'll divide into two groups. One will create a distraction while the other sneaks around to flank the enemy. Lyra, you're with me. Jake, Mia, and Daniel, you'll create the diversion. As they prepared, Varric handed Lyra a small communicator. Stay in touch. If anything goes wrong, we need to regroup quickly. He looked each of them in the eye, his gaze serious. This is our moment. We either win or lose together. With a final nod, they split into their groups, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Lyra's heart raced as they crept toward the enemy lines, the sounds of battle echoing in the background. The distraction group, led by Jake, Mia, and Daniel, moved stealthily, gathering what weapons they could find. They were armed with improvised explosives, determined to create chaos among the Tyrannians. Lyra watched as they moved into position, her heart swelling with pride. They were brave, and together, they could make a difference. Let's go, Varric whispered, motioning for Lyra to follow him. They moved quietly, slipping through the shadows as they approached the Tyrannian encampment. Lyra could see the enemy soldiers gathering, preparing for a counterattack. Suddenly, a loud explosion erupted behind them, followed by shouts of confusion. The diversion group had struck, and Lyra felt a rush of adrenaline. This was their moment to attack. Now, Varric shouted, and they charged forward, catching the Tyrannians off guard. Blaster fire lit up the sky, and Lyra felt the weight of the weapon in her hands. She took a deep breath and steadied her aim, firing at the nearest enemy. The battle erupted into chaos as both sides clashed. Lyra fought with everything she had, adrenaline fueling her movements. She was no longer just a girl from Earth. She was a warrior, standing alongside her friends to protect their future. As they pressed forward, Lyra caught a glimpse of Jake, Mia, and Daniel creating even more havoc among the Tyrannians. They were fighting valiantly, their determination evident even amidst the chaos. Lyra felt a surge of pride as she watched them. They had become a family through their struggles. But just as victory seemed within reach, a familiar voice echoed through the battlefield. Lyra. It was a Tyrannian officer, standing tall among the chaos, eyes locked onto her. It was Commander Zaltra, the very same officer who had hunted her down before. Panic surged through Lyra, but she pushed it aside. This was her chance to confront him. She would not let fear take hold again. Zaltra, Lyra shouted, her voice steady despite her racing heart. You'll pay for what you've done. He smirked, unfazed by her defiance. You think you can defeat me? You're just a human girl. You have no idea what you're up against. But Lyra didn't waver. She tightened her grip on her weapon, ready to fight. I've faced worse than you. I fight for my friends, for my home. With a roar, she charged at him, her heart pounding in her chest. The two collided, and Lyra felt the heat of battle surrounding them. They exchanged blows, the weight of their fight shaking the ground beneath them. Lyra could feel every ounce of strength coursing through her as she fought, fueled by the love and determination she felt for her friends. Zaltra was a formidable opponent, but Lyra had something he didn't, the will to protect her loved ones. With a surge of energy, she dodged one of his attacks and countered with a swift strike to his side. He stumbled, momentarily caught off guard. Enough, he shouted, rage flaring in his eyes. You will regret this. But before he could retaliate, Commander Varric intervened, coming to Lyra's side. You've underestimated her, Zaltra, he said, a fierce look in his eyes. You've underestimated all of us. The tide began to turn as Varric and Lyra fought side by side. They coordinated their attacks, using their strengths to cover each other. Together, they pressed Zaltra back, forcing him to retreat. Meanwhile, Jake, Mia, and Daniel continued their fight against the remaining Tyranians. They fought valiantly, their hearts burning with the desire to protect one another. Lyra could see the determination on their faces, and it fueled her own resolve. The battle raged on, but Lyra felt a sense of hope. They were united, fighting for their freedom and each other. The Tyranians were beginning to falter, their organization crumbling under the pressure of the resistance. As the last of the Tyranians fell, a deafening silence enveloped the battlefield. Lyra breathed heavily, looking around at her friends, their faces filled with disbelief and triumph. They had done it. They had fought back and emerged victorious. Lyra turned to Varric, who was catching his breath. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with awe. He nodded, a proud smile breaking through his exhaustion. "Yes, we did. But this isn't the end. It's only the beginning."